Chair, you are live.
Good afternoon. I'd like to call this meeting to order. It is 4:02 p.m. on April 14th, 2022. First item of business is to call roll call, and I'll start with the Vice Chairman, David Brown.
Present.
Buncombe County Commissioner Parker Sloan. Christy Quinn. Ann Keller.
Here.
Joe Ransmeyer. Councilwoman Sage Turner.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon. Tim Schaller.
Here.
Ben Williamson.
I'm here. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Kate Nkaya.
Here. Hello.
Hi. Jeremy Goldstein.
Here.
Samantha Cole. And Jim McAllister. We do have a quorum, so we can begin. Good afternoon. I'm Chair Darren Green, and I'd like to welcome you to the April 14th, 2022 Asheville Area River Redevelopment Commission meeting. Purpose of the AARRC is to recommend to the city and county an overall policy for the continued development and sustainability of the regional riverfront. The commission provides recommendations to the city and county for effective management of the public resources for the districts and actively pursues and assists private sector investments in the district. The commission is made up of 14 members representing the city of Asheville, the Council of Independent Business Owners, Riverlink, Asheville City Council, Buncombe County Commission, and the town of Woodfin. Our committees consist of mobility and transportation connections and public safety, including river recreation and water quality. All commission members and staff are participating virtually. We appreciate your patience as we work through committee meetings a bit differently. Pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 166A-19.24F, this will be a remote meeting which the public can access by any of the following means. We are streaming live on our virtual engagement hub, which is accessible through the virtual engagement hub link on the front page of the city website and also linked on the committee page. We also have an option for the public to listen live by phone by calling 855-925-2801. The meeting code number is 9385. For callers to call in and listen, send comments by email to Riverfront Commission April 14@publicinput.com. For those of you out there with us today, welcome. While we don't have the minutes to review, well, you do now. They were sent out a little bit later this afternoon, but we wanted to give you time to review those and to make sure that the minutes are accurate, and there are some quotes from commissioners. We want to make sure that those are representative of what you said. So please take a minute. You can find those minutes linked on our agenda page, and we'll go ahead and review and approve those next month. Was there any public comment received in advance?
There is no public comment at this time.
Thank you. We are moving the Asheville Unpaved presentation by Mike Sewell to our next meeting, until our June meeting. And that should be a really interesting presentation and an exciting one. We're going to move into our discussion on boards and commissions, restructure proposals. Steph Monson-Dahl from the city of Asheville is going to review that, and then we can have a discussion regarding that. And I also sent out an email, which was an invitation from anybody in the community, especially those that sit on commissions and boards, to participate, which will be a working group that'll occur over the next 6 months. And you'll find the specifics to that in an email that I sent you this afternoon. Steph, I'll hand it off to you now. Thank you.
I'll start by asking Jeremy Goldstein to let us know what question he has.
Sorry. Maybe I just missed this, but
did we skip something on the agenda after Mike's school or no?
We are holding off. Lucy Crown is on a phone call.
So I
And
did
she-
miss it.
Actually,
Sorry.
yeah, she's on a phone
Sorry,
call.
Jeremy. I should have mentioned that.
Yeah, so we're gonna do boards and commissions first, and then we'll have Lucy talk about the gap plan. Okay, so let's just chat. Let's just chat about boards and commissions to start with. This is helpful actually for me. At our last retreat meeting, we didn't really get to do our get to know you section, so this might be part of it. The question I want to ask you is, what other types of boards or commissions have you served on or do you serve on now? And I'm just going to start with, I'm going to ask Tim Schaller. So Tim, are you on any other boards or have you served on any other boards?
Right now, I'm on the BizWorks board, BizWorks Executive Committee.
And what kind of board is it? Like what's the purpose of it? How would you describe the purpose of it? Do you make decisions? Do you direct the work of the Mountain BizWorks director? What do you do?
Yeah, I mean, we do direct decisions. I'm also on the credit committee. So if it's a large loan, it has to go to the board to be voted on. So the board has, power over those loans. It's also, we discuss the direction of BizWorks. It's a very much a working board. So it's an active board. I've also served on the RADBA board and all that stuff, but the BizWorks board is my present and pleasant. That's what I'm doing.
So it sounds like it's a board of directors almost?
Well, there's a board of directors. I'm also on that at the moment, but the whole board does actually vote on a specific direction for BizWorks.
Is anybody else on a board that has a similar type of function or has ever served on a board like that? Sage, go for it.
Gosh, I've been on tons of boards, like the Manna Food Bank, Brother Wolf Animal Rescue, Family Vegetation Center, lots of board directors overseeing an executive director, typically using like policy governance models.
So can you give us, what has your experience been? Have you been on boards that have both been high performing and low performing, or?
Absolutely. I've been on probably, I think I've served something like 60 terms on boards. So the most high performing board I ever experienced in this community was Manna Food Bank. It had about 23 to 25 members at any given point. They were brought in for specific experience. They were tasked with task forces and subcommittees where they did incredible work, and then we'd regroup, and it was impeccable. That the leadership and the organization of that board was impressive.
Why do you think it worked out so well?
Strong executive director, access to subsidiary staff if needed, but mostly supportive, very clear communication, very clearly outlined directives given. So the board would say, come up with an initiative and some outcomes that they'd hope, like some deliverables, and then a task force or a committee would take it up, bring it back, the whole board would review, and it'd move. It's pretty efficient, really.
Does anybody else have a story about a board they were on that didn't do very well?
I was going to tell you about one that did well, but I'll wait till that.
Yeah, no, go for it. Let's keep going with positivity.
So the Riverlink board is pretty active and involved, and in the same way, has a lot of commitment, and it takes a lot of work on itself and does a lot of the work because the staff is only 6 people. And with a group like that, with a huge set of goals and plans that Riverlink has, you have to have a lot of activity from the board. So I would say it was really very active and good board.
How do you make sure that the work that the board is doing is aligned with the work that staff is doing?
Well, I guess, when we have our board meetings, we talk about the things that need to be done, and board members really aren't supposed to be that involved with staff in terms of, not giving them direction or anything else, but collaborating doing things that add to the effort, and the executive committee is pretty involved as well to help, kind of keep things focused. And then at the board meetings, having talked to the executive director and knowing what we need to do, we take on certain things, but it's, it's all within the agreed upon approach. We try not to go off in tangents. Let me just say it that way.
What do you mean by the agreed upon approach?
Well, I mean, it could be that we need a committee to talk about some particular project, so we've recently added a couple of different committees because they were needed, and they may be forever, but sometimes we have a committee that comes in and takes some, and delves into things, takes some action, and comes back to the board with some suggestions. And then those 3 or 4 people that are also still always on the board, for the most part, maybe did their work and they move on. We do have some community members on different committees. So there's a little bit of additional information that they might be able to offer at that time as well.
So has anybody here served on a board for like a private business? So is it fair to say that most of the experience here is with not-for-profit boards, probably? And city has, and I know one person here has served on a state board, correct? David Brown? You're muted.
Yes, privilege of being on the North Carolina Department of Transportation Board 2 different times. Once under Governor Martin and once under Governor McCoy. And that was a lot of 21 members. We had divided into 14 divisions. I had the 13th division, which had 7 in it. And we would meet monthly on our big boards, and then some couple of times a month, depending on how many you would be on. We had a huge amount of staff support. It worked very well. They'd have a budget of over $4.4 billion, and not only the North Carolina Railroad, the port system, Port Authority was all under.
Wow. Yeah, it's an enormous thing. So does anybody want to share any, they don't have to name the board, but does anyone want to share an example of being on a board where you felt frustrated or you felt like things weren't working well? And it's okay if it's this one.
I'll share. Sometimes my experience was that the younger the organization, the more chaotic it was on the board. And it would often be a struggle between, understanding what the board's role is versus the CEO or director's role, and what's operational and what's a board role. And when that stuff wasn't clear, it was kind of chaotic. It would be like conversations about how businesses should be run day to day, or something like how personnel issues should be, dealt with. But that's really like a staff thing, and board is about policy. And so when those roles weren't clear, that was when I had hectic meetings, wanting to resign, kind of stuff.
Leaving space in case anybody else wants to talk.
Hey, Steph, I don't mind chipping in. I served a board for an organization for a while that did a lot of really good things and kind of heroic things, but also struggled on. And honestly, it wasn't a big board, so the biggest issue was attendance. So when we had people that didn't show up or weren't accountable, we weren't able to hold quorum, and we'd have to reschedule meetings and delay initiatives, and it was that was incredibly frustrating to have folks that agreed to that position, and obviously were volunteering their time, but when they weren't able to show up, it really put the brakes on a lot of hard work. So I guess I'd share that.
All right. So the Asheville Area Riverfront Redevelopment Commission, the ordinance for the commission was passed in November of 2009, and the first meeting of this group was in May of 2010. Leading up to 2009, there was about a year where the city, through the leadership of then city manager Gary Jackson, through the then leadership of city manager Gary Jackson, really convened a group of people to talk about what to do next for the river. The Wilma-Dykeman Riverway Master Plan had been adopted in 2004. We also had some devastating floods in our French Broad and Suananua Riverfront, basically the exact same time that the plan was adopted. And we switched from thinking about plan adoption to thinking about flood mitigation at that time. So for those of you around, you'll remember that we got a bunch of different grants and from the state, whether it was pass-through from FEMA or what have you. And we did a ton of work, especially in the Biltmore Village area, for flood resiliency. And we also looked at the planning department of the city looked at redevelopment in 3 specific areas along the riverfront. One of them actually was the eventual New Belgium site. But I'm going to read you this letter, and I'm not going to tell you who it's from, but I think there'll be at least 1 or 2 people here that know it's from. So we were at the time convening a group of maybe 10 or 15 people who really wanted to be at the table and talk about how things should go. And this is a letter in 2009 that someone said, could you please send this out to the group? Last night, August 31st, Mike Plemons, Executive Director of the Council of Independent Business Owners, or CIBO, and I attended the steering committee for the new Riverfront Commission at the Chamber of Commerce building. The meeting was co-chaired by Mayor Terry Bellamy and Chairman of the Buncombe County Commission, David Gant. The purpose of this meeting was to put the finishing touches on the plan to implement the Riverfront Commission, whose purpose appears to be to coordinate the long-term development of the River District within the boundaries of the Wilma-Dykeman Plan, which encompasses the Suananua and the French Broad within Buncombe County. Over to the present members is attached for your information. As many of you know, on Monday morning before this meeting, there was a meeting that was called of Riverfront property owners and businesses, explain the plan and get comments. We had an excellent turnout, and my best guess is that we had between 65 and 75 people in attendance. City Manager Gary Jackson did an excellent job of facilitating this meeting, which resulted in well thought out and reasoned questions and comments. These comments were transcribed and presented to Mr. Jackson to the afternoon group. There was a perceptive attitudinal sea change, as I don't think that the planning group had taken into account that the cooperation of the river property owners and business community is critical to the success of that plan, and without our buy-in, nothing of significance will take place. They were very interested in the remarks and are now very eager to work with us to make this happen. The most significant change was they agreed to make at least 6 of the 13 members of this new commission to be either business or property owners within the River District. My opinion of this was if there was ever a crucial vote on something affecting us, it is hard to believe that at least one of the remaining 7 members would not support the property owners. It was also agreed that one of the members would be a city council member and one would be a county commissioner. I think this is important because if we really want to get some things done on the river, we will need the clout and the prestige of the elected bodies, and these folks will be our conduit and also our go-to people. After listening to the morning and afternoon discussions, I think there's a possibility that we could all greatly benefit from this program. To begin with, they have offered us a resource facilitator who will help us build a database of river property owners and do the very difficult work of providing communication and information to us river rats. This means that if in the future the river rats want a formal organization, the leadership will not be stuck with having to do all the time-consuming grunt work of getting out the word to our organization, and we will have people more willing to serve on our group. Secondly, there are huge pools of money that from time to time find their way to projects like this. Both Mayor Bellamy and Chairman Gant were very clear that there's no money right now, but if we have an active river commission and money came along, we would have the infrastructure to go after it. Third, there is a program available that allows the city and county to pay for certain infrastructure costs to help the developers build projects, and the taxes from these new projects would go to repay the city and county instead of going to general funds. Fourth, this committee could be influential in bringing the various utilities to the table and to get their input and help in future development. For instance, someone pointed out that Norfolk Southern Railroad was one of the largest property holders in the area, and none of us have ever had any contact or input from them on river development. Fifth, this committee would have considerable influence on introducing new flood control measures, such as working with the water department on the North Fork Reservoir and with the railway on replacing the current bridge. And this is what they're talking about, is the trestle bridge that we lowered the road on for the rad tip, which is over 100 years old and is a serious impediment to river flow, with a hydrodynamically designed structure that would not result in blocking the river during high water periods. The important thing is we river rats must get involved, and those that can should make themselves available to serve on the committee if appointed, and be certain if they are diligent in attending meetings and staying active. Yada, yada, yada. I urge you to attend and get all your neighbors there to respectfully ask questions and give your input. Respectfully submitted, blank. Who wrote it?
Gary Sternberg.
That's right. Okay, Jeremy knew it. That's right. Jerry Sternberg wrote it. And Jerry was one of the first Riverfront Commission members. So when it was formed, these were the members. Robert Camille. Do people know who Robert Camille is?
Oh, yes.
Robert Camille, for those of you who don't know, was the original, well, not the original. He owned what is now the Foundation Studios that you all visited. Before it was Foundation Studios. So those folks purchased it from Robert Camille. Jerry Vihan. Jerry Vihan, I'm just going to give him tons of shout outs and props. He did so many things that helped spur the work that we did in the first couple of years. Ben Teague from Asheville Chamber of Commerce, who now works for Biltmore Farms. Ricky Silver. So we were just talking before this meeting started about the Silver Line Park. So 10 years ago, Ricky Silver, he became the second chairman of the Riverfront Commission, and he served on it for his 2 terms. Jerry Sternberg, Patty Turno, Carl Kuhn. I hope you all know Carl. He's also a SIBO member, and he owns, his family owns a lot of property in the Biltmore Village area. And Joe Farikas. Do you guys remember Joe Farikas? Joe Farikas was one of the owners of the New Belgium site. So he owned half of that 14 acres and worked with Ben Teague in the beginning to, by less than 2 years after the Riverfront Commission started, New Belgium announced that they would be taking over that site. So they did that together through the Riverfront Commission. Miller Williams, who at the time was working for Biltmore Farms, I think, Denise Snodgrass and Robert Griffin. Denise was the chair of Riverlink at the time, and Robert Griffin is an architect in Biltmore Village who also was on the Riverlink board. So those were the original and founding members of the Riverfront Commission. The Riverfront Study Group that actually worked together to form it included Jerry Sternberg, but also had people like John Crichton was on that group, and Wanda Green sometimes came. And I want to say Margie Eblin was on that group. So that was, and Karen Craig Dolan was on that group. So what ended up happening is that this group, as you heard from Jerry's letter, really influenced the creation of this commission down to the level where Jerry said, I want half of these folks to be business or property owners. And that's what happened to the ordinance. So I'm going to share my screen because I want you to see how you can get to the ordinance and really kind of understand. Let's see. Oh, it's not going to let me do that. So I'm going to, instead of trying to fix things right now, I'm just going to kind of keep going. So if you were to go, and this is great for anybody, if general information, we subscribe to a system. It's called MuniCode, short for municipal code. And if you were to just put it in any web search engine, I'm not going to name one in particular, MuniCode, M-U-N-I code, Asheville, you're going to go to that website, and it's basically our Unified Development Ordinance. And you can go to Chapter 7, and that's our development section, and you'll find everything under River District Design Review because it's part of that process. And in that chapter 7. For chapter 2, that's our administrative section. So almost all of our boards and commissions, the ordinances for them are in chapter 2. So if you go to Muni Code Asheville and you click on that and you go into chapter code 2, you're going to find the Asheville Area Riverfront Redevelopment Commission. And what you're going to see there is that it has a general purpose. It outlines what the general purpose is, and it's very vague. It just says that it would be beneficial for all of the people in the Asheville region to have a body that provides an overall development policy and a sustainable growth for the regional riverfront. And underneath that, it lists about 16 duties or responsibilities that the Riverfront Commission can really have. Now, that ordinance, while the membership was very much dictated by the study group, and it was, we're going to have members appointed from SIBO, we're going to have members appointed from Riverlink, the base of it was really influenced by having a downtown commission already, having a place-based commission that had an ordinance that seemed to be generally working at the time. So if you were to compare the outline of the Riverfront Commission and the outline of the Downtown Commission, they are incredibly similar. And in the beginning, they were almost identical. So that's something to think about. And the Downtown Commission, and Dana might be able to, and maybe even Sage could help me out on this one, but I want to say that was, good Lord, the Downtown Commission had to have started in the 90s. Something. It's a pretty old ordinance. Like this is something that had not been updated in quite a while. Dana?
I think late 80s actually. 86. I'll double check.
Okay. So and I don't think that had ever been. So and my point here is just to talk about relevancy as we move forward over time. So let me stop talking because that's a whole lot. Any questions or anything anybody else remember or comments you have to share about how the Riverfront Commission got put together? Who on this commission has been on the Riverfront Commission the longest? Maybe Darren?
Maybe me or Tim.
Pretty short Darren, but yeah.
And okay. Probably Darren. So you're our historical expert as a commission member, Darren.
Oh, Lord.
Okay.
That was an interesting synopsis. Thank you.
So that I just wanted, to have in your mind as we start talking about boards and commissions. So the city of Asheville does have about 40 boards and commissions. And of those, there are maybe 25 that are what we call strictly advisory boards. So some boards, as you know, Planning and Zoning Commission, Board of Adjustment, they have a mandatory job that evolves mostly out of either state statutes required for development review, like everybody's required to have a planning and zoning commission, or it evolves out of a need from our own ordinances. Like we administratively allow, variances to our tree requirements, and we have the Urban Forestry Commission provide those variances. But the rest of these boards, mostly just, advisory boards that are very, very important to the city of Asheville, especially because they provide us connectivity to the community. They provide staff, as much as that these are supposed to be boards that report directly to council and provide advice to staff. I'll just tell you from staff's opinion, the number one benefit of having these boards is that we get to work with 10 or 15 community members on a monthly basis and understand what the hot topics are and also what the long-term strategies and priorities are for the community. So we can know from council and others what is going on. So, as you know, there is a proposal right now to restructure the way that we do boards and commissions. And if I was I'm not because, and I really apologize for this technical issue, but I'm not able to share my my screen right now. I'm just going to talk about it. And what I'll say is that this past Tuesday, the manager's report was given to City Council and included an update. So I'm going to share what some of those updates are. So just as a reminder, this proposal is specifically to address what are seen as some deficiencies with our current board and commission framework. And that is that we need to be more strategic, efficient, and inclusive in the way we work. I'm actually going to take a second and explain what some of those mean, I think, or maybe I'll ask you guys. So is anybody willing, somebody mentioned efficient before, actually it was Sage. Is anybody willing to talk about what an efficient board would look like? Or why it's important? Let's do it that way. Why is being efficient important? Come on, Ann Keller.
Time. People don't want to waste a lot of time. You got to get in there and do it, get done, move on.
Thank you.
You're
To
welcome.
the point. What about strategic? Why is that important?
I think it's similar. It's just being directed. Here's the problem. Look at it. Do it. Yeah.
I think you're also needing to think ahead and make a plan that gets you where you need to be.
Right.
All right, and I'm going to ask Darren Green, because Darren Green at our last meeting mentioned that he was really struck in speaking with Jay from Black Wall Street about the need for this board to think more about diversity. Why is it important to make sure our board and commission framework is more inclusive?
Well, one, it's the right thing to do. I mean, I think morally we can all agree that it's right to include all of our community from every corner. And oftentimes the folks that aren't represented, they have challenges about there's obstacles that, you know, organizations like us need to work a little harder to gather them and include those who might otherwise not be asked, or you know, I think we all as a community just need to be more put a little more effort into that, because it is more challenging for some of those folks to become involved.
Great answer. So strategic, efficient, inclusive, those are the goals of the restructuring process. And then there's also been, I think, 4 operational issues identified, and this is through conversations with both city staff members and also the public and some chairs. And those operational challenges within the current system are people feel like there's a lack of clarity around roles for boards themselves or board members, and then like what the responsibilities of staff are, how do you have to be accountable as a board member? Are they supposed to be making reports? And the second part is there's a lack of clarity of like the workflow and how there's actually a connection to city council. So this idea that if, you know, we were created as an advisory board to city council, you know, really, how does that happen? Are we really just relying on, say, in this case, there's been many people, but in this case, Sage to do everything? And then for a board like this, where really it was created to make recommendations to the city and county, how are you supposed to make recommendations to the county? Is there supposed to be a staff liaison from the county? All of those different kinds of questions that have come up over the years. The third operational issue that's been identified is just the management and like the limitations of city staff. knowing that we have so many boards and that every time we create a new one, that we don't create a new staff position that goes along with it. And I was struck earlier when people were talking about their experiences with good boards, how it's really important to have a dedicated staff person or a director who's like maybe very well organized or knows what the mission and goals are and can spend time with that board, really developing it. And I think it's important for everyone here to realize, because you haven't been here long, that I've been the staff person for the Riverfront Commission, excluding 1 year when I had Sarah Henry do it. She's amazing. We love Sarah Henry and miss her. And when we first started out as a board, my job was just to get up every day and make things happen in the river. So I admit that at that time, I think I was a pretty good board liaison. It has been several years, and I would say for most of y'all's experience on this board, I have not gotten up every day and just had to focus on the river. I have had other jobs, and I admit that definitely plays into this board potentially feeling like they're not clear about what the roles and goals are here. Jeremy.
Yeah, and forgive me if this has already been answered, but has there been an analysis or of the progression of how many boards we had in 2009, 2015, and 2020? Like, how many more boards have been added? Because you mentioned, the staffs. I know that, our staff liaison on planning and zoning for the 6 years I was there was incredibly important. It was a very demanding board. I easily spent 40 hours a month on that board work. But having the staff support was important. But I am just curious, because you mentioned we keep adding boards, but not staff. How many boards have we added?
I don't have the answer to that right now, but I do know that has been analyzed, and I can get back to you on it.
Steph, one of the things that I've mentioned a couple times in different settings is I think one of the reasons that we're in the position we're in with so many is that you start them and there's never an ending date. And I don't think that allows a reconsideration of what we really need now. And is this one still working, or do we need to take half of its work away and move them into something else and whatever? And I think, it's a common situation in government. You start whatever group it is, and there's never a consideration that maybe we should put a date on it 5 years from now, that we either think it needs to be redone, stay as it is, or totally cut because we are done with it. And I think that's one of the reasons we have so many. It does take a little bit of thought, but if you every year or every however many years sat and looked across and said, interview you and all the other people that are being board liaisons and also look at the work, I think it would be pretty easy to figure out which ones are still needed and which ones you could put together or whatever. And then you've constantly got a renewal and you don't get to the point where you're looking around at everyone thinking, why are we even here? I think that's a frustration that probably a lot of people feel, because things change over time.
Really good point. The last thing I wanted to mention that was brought up as just an operational issue is that people felt they were people on boards felt that they were disconnected from other boards, and were always surprised to hear that maybe another board was working on the same issue or talking about the same issue. And from staff's perspective, that disconnection looks like, one board will want an update on such and such topic, but also 6 other boards will want an update on the same topic. And it's not necessarily untrue that they will benefit from having that information, but there is a recognition on both the board members and the staff members' part that boards weren't working together across lines to come up with joint ideas around policy to advise to council. So that was the last issue.
I have a question for probably Sage and Steph. in this new, or this proposed structure, do you imagine that questions or issues might be sent to these new boards from staff and or council, or how do you see that? Do you think staff will see some sort of issue and then say to council, hey, we see this as an issue, will you direct your board to look into this? Or how do you see that, those questions being disseminated out?
Are you saying what staff thinks might need done, or what the work
What-
might become? How it?
So if the commissions are in place to help solve problems or help dive into to questions that council might have, do you imagine that staff's gonna, contact?
I mean,
how do you think it will work?
Generally speak, I mean, that's to be determined, right? Because this is all still, there's still an expected pilot, if it's even approved or moves forward. I was expecting more of a middle ground kind of, I thought maybe there'd be more input back from the community that would be a little bit different. But so far, it just seems like either do this or don't do this, but there doesn't seem to be too much middle ground being discussed. I think, though, we often, as I know, I can only speak for myself, but I often lean on staff's expertise because they are experts in this field. So I could see it being both. I could see it being a council person or a series of counselors with an issue that needs discussed, researched, feedback, etc., and that could go out. Or I could see that staff could potentially see something coming up because they are in this work every day and suggest that there's a topic or a solution or a problem coming up. And Steph, maybe you have thoughts on that.
I just agree with you that we don't know what that looks like, but it has been proposed that either way, there'll be a stronger connection between what council is working on and what the boards and what the new boards or existing boards would be working on.
So sorry, Jeremy, I know your hand's up, but I have a follow-up. So my follow-up is, why hasn't that happened in this current structure? So why hasn't city council said, we have this question regarding the riverfront, we'd like you to dive into this issue? Because certainly there have been questions or concerns, or maybe that happens with other boards, but I haven't seen that happen within us.
I've seen it happen with other council committees and other boards. I haven't seen it happen with us, but I haven't been here as long.
I think that there's also a tendency for council, which I've seen in my 17 years of working here, to appoint task force when they have a really specific question. So a great example was the city and county jointly appointed the Vance Monument Task Force, and they said, you have such and such weeks to give us a recommendation on whether or not we should remove this monument. And it was very pointed. To Ann's point earlier, you knew what you were doing and you knew when this thing was going to end and when you needed to report it to council. And so that is usually, while I can't answer your question directly, I can say that has happened several times.
Yeah, and Darren, I know that Stacey has, I have to say, honestly, not so much lately. This is my last year on Stacey, and I don't think it's been the same way. It hasn't been this way the last 2 or 3 years. But when I first started, Stacey was really active and engaged in providing support and answers to city council about an ordinance or a resolution, I should say. And a lot of different things came, and we had all kinds of conversations and presentations from people at the meetings and things like that. It doesn't seem like that's been such a big thing. Part of it might have been COVID. Maybe the city is shifting a little bit away from the goals that Stacey had been drawn up to deal with. That could be another part of this. So again, time and change. But we've had direct input about, would you give us your feeling or support or yes or no about this particular thing? often, but not lately.
Jeremy, I know your hand's been up.
Am I allowed to speak? I'm still processing this myself, but these are the things that I think about when I think about, in particular, what you mentioned, Darren, about accessibility to more people. I can't understand in my head how you can go from a number of boards and commissions and opportunities to participate down to 4, how that's going to be more accessible to more people. I think it's a little laughable that you think, I'm all in favor of increased efficiency and figuring out how to do things better. So I'm completely in favor of that, but I've served on these task forces, the Pit of Despair Civic Center, task force, and just got beat to hell over it after 18 months or 12 months. And, you put people into a temporary situation with a bunch of people that you don't have relationships with. And one thing that's great about these boards is an opportunity for people to, build expertise, build relationships, build community. And if you're popping in and out of working groups, it's really more of a recipe for confrontation, in my opinion, versus, how do we get more people from different parts of our community involved? And how do we make it more efficient? And I'm just having a hard time understanding how going down to 4 groups with a bunch of working groups, how you gonna get people to want to work on those groups? Those are the things that are swirling around in my head.
And Jeremy, I'm 100% there with you. I don't understand how this is going to function at all. It seems like it's going to be a lot of whirling stuff around, and the people that are actually on the commission are going to be overwhelmed and frustrated and might not ever want to serve. That's the biggest concern. The other one is going from 28 or 40 down to 4 does not make sense to me. I think I understand the 4 focal areas of the comp plan. Those are great. But I don't know why all of a sudden you only go to 4. You could go from 40 down to 10, and you could have multiple pieces flowing into the one topic that the comp plan is supposed to be of the 4. I just feel like you do, confused about how this is better or more efficient, and how it's workable with the kind of people, like you're saying, coming and going in just 4 areas.
Ben?
Yeah, I would echo a lot of what Jeremy and Ann said. I think it's easy to see the stress on staff from the sheer volume and number of meetings and number of boards. I can't imagine the workload and the time that would take. Obviously, I love the number of opportunities for transparency and civic engagement that allows the community, but I can see how that's just way too many. Going down to 4, to echo the other comments, feels like an overcorrection just from my limited perspective. And I do think you can increase diversity of involvement by more targeted recruitment, even if you went down to 8 or 10 or 12 commissions, and hopefully increase efficiency and decrease the stress on staff and the time commitment and the workload that they would have. So I just wanted to add those comments.
So today, I just wanted to introduce the topic and get some feedback from you all. It's been great feedback, and I'm taking this feedback to our city clerk's office and the staff that are working on this on a different level from me. Just as a reminder, and Darren sent this email out to you right before the commission, there is a meeting on May 5th to look at that working group structure. And that's kind of like, it's the task force or standing or not standing committees that would look at very specific issues. And so I know your time is limited, but I'd ask you to consider potentially attending. And if you can't, know that I care a lot about this. I think you all do too. Very passionate. We're all very passionate about getting things done here in our community. And so if we can just make a commitment to continue talking about it, and I can bring in, say, Sarah Gross or other people to maybe better answer some of these questions. to start piecing together some of your feedback, perhaps in a way that it impacts the proposal. I think that's the most important thing. Then we would get somewhere with all this. Jeremy, did you have a question? Tim did. Okay. Muted.
I'm not now. I sort of bite my tongue because it's sort of negative. I feel like it's interesting that this is coming up now. And I guess it's mostly a staffing situation. But what I've found in the last couple of years, it's really hard to get things done with the city when it didn't used to be. Specifically, what's going on with this, what used to be Harry Pielos's project, and getting a simple one-way road put through there so that, the neighborhood down at the river can feel like, okay, we're not going to lose that road. There's no way that it should take 5 or 6 weeks for that to happen. And that's not through a commission, that's through small neighborhood people going directly. And Shannon did a great job of getting it almost done. And I feel like now that it may actually get done, and I don't want this conversation to go past this commission because I was told not to, because some of the parties in it are afraid that it won't get done if I point the finger. So, it's not the middle finger, it's just a finger. But, I just feel like there is that layered over all of this is probably the overstaffing or whatever's going on, that things are not being reacted to very well right now. And it's hard for me to say it to Steph because she's the one person I know that does give a shit. And there's a lot of other people that do and are working hard to do it. But something's happening right now that's not working well, is my feeling.
We appreciate you sharing that. It's important to know. Okay, so more to come on that topic. Chair, back to you.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for your input, and I'm sure this discussion is just beginning. We are going to move over to the GAP plan overview. I hope everyone had a chance to watch the video. It did a good job of distilling a lot of hard work that's been going on. And I'm going to throw the microphone over to Lucy, who can give you some more information and a project overview about the GAP plan.
Thank you, Darren. Hello, Riverfront Commission. Thanks for having me today. I'm waiting for my slideshow to come up and I will share it with you. Okay, can you see that? Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okie doke. So for those of you who might not know me, my name is Lucy Crown. I work in the transportation department of the city. My primary projects are typically the greenways, but I've been working for the past nearly 2 years now on the Close the Gap plan, and I'm here to tell you more about it. Maybe if I can get my slides to advance. Let's see, here we go. Oh. So the GAP is an acronym. It stands for Greenways, ADA Transition, and Pedestrian Plans. And we wanted to do these 3 plans simultaneously because our goal was to identify a citywide network of safe pedestrian facilities that would enable people to walk from home to key destinations. The Greenway network, what we were prioritizing as our goals was to expand and refine the Asheville's spine network, which is mostly our river greenways, and to identify and prioritize new greenway types that would help us create a better network throughout the city. And I'll tell you more about it later, but a quick shot of it shows you that we have developed some new typologies. So going from the big spine greenways like the Wilma Dykeman would go into different directions of the city, such as the Reed Creek Greenway, And then we have new greenway types that would go into the neighborhoods, and possibly working with partners right now on a really exciting idea of getting natural surface trails throughout the city. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a little bit. The ADA transition plan, our goal was to identify and prioritize the most urgent corridors to bring into national compliance to ensure mobility for all abilities. And this was a much easier approach than trying to map out the areas that need ADA attention, because it would have just been a big red blob. And so we needed to strategize on how to make this an easier process through policies and education, and finding funding to be able to address corridors or neighborhoods. Oh, these are great pictures of some of the ADA challenges that we typically see. This is downtown, a sidewalk that's way too narrow and also obstructed with poles and signs. Far too often our sidewalks look like this in our neighborhoods, or sometimes we even have great looking facilities, but if they don't have the right crossings and the right type of ramps, people who actually do have physical disabilities aren't really able to access them and are forced out into the street. This is just at Charlotte Street and Edward Place, as a matter of fact.
Lucy, this is Sage. Can I ask you a question while you have that shot up?
Yes.
Back one slide. I didn't think you could see raised hands.
Mm-hmm.
So this picture on the right, I'm the gentleman in the wheelchair, and then the picture on the left of the sidewalk with that, I forget what we call that pattern. I want to raise a point that I've mentioned in other boards, and I don't know what the city's doing about that pattern of sidewalk. But the gentleman on the right, I see all the time, and when I talk to people about it, why, they say it's that pattern on the left that they won't roll on. And they have a noise and a sound. I just want to share that because I do think that pattern of sidewalk is not helpful.
Okay. And Dana might be able to answer this, but is that a type of sidewalk design that we typically recommend in development downtown? Maybe.
It's our running bond. We call it running bond, and it is something we recommend, although we have talked about changing it at many points. And so I appreciate the input for sure. It's something we could definitely also talk about with the Downtown Public Space Management Group, get some further input there. So yeah, thank you for sharing.
Thanks, Dana. And then the P part, the pedestrian plan, we were identifying prioritized projects to fill gaps in the network. Again, kind of like the ADA plan, if we had just made a map that showed where all the gaps were, it would have been a big red blob. So we had to figure out how to strategize, promote by policies, and funding strategies as well. So we're wanting to see new sidewalks, pedestrian curb ramps, street crossings. Both of these are also very important in the ADA transition plan, and access to bus stops, another big ADA transition plan need. So we started with the simple questions of what we know. And what we know is that we need to prioritize our areas because the city can't fix everything and build everything at one time. We've got a lot of needs. So we've figured out ways to prioritize, and I'm going to talk about the methodology a little bit, but as we are laying out the prioritization, I just think it's also important to let you understand that just because something might be lower down on a prioritization list doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to take longer to implement. There's a lot of balancing acts in prioritization lists due to funding, due to timing, due to low-hanging fruit opportunities that can make things skip on the list. But being on the prioritization list and explanations why it's there are part of what we're doing in the GAP plan. And we also spent some time showing that it's really long, hard, and expensive to make transportation projects. You have to go through a lot of phases. It can take up to, if everything's going perfectly, which it never does, it could take 3 years from the thumbs up of working on a project. So 3 years for a very desired and well-funded project. And most of them take much longer than that, as I know a lot of you have seen. So here are some of the big deals of the GAP plan. So we had to figure out how to score all of the roads in Asheville. And we came down to 4 qualifications: destination and equity score, safety, connectivity, and public input. And the destination and equity score is an interesting combination of knowing through census data where our BIPOC communities and low-income neighborhoods reside. The red ones in the center of town you might recognize as being some of the red line neighborhoods of historical Asheville. But we see a lot of marginalized neighborhoods now even farther out in what were ETJ areas, or when Asheville was doing a lot of annexation. So we have a lot of needs on the edges of town, in the middle of town, and well, everywhere. So our destination and equity score combines our equity factors, like I said, from our census, and then our destination scores, which looks more like a heat map. And our list of destinations were where we considered where people need to go, and what we heard from people during our meetings and our online surveys. So when you combine the two, you get our destination and equity score that we put on every road in Asheville. Then the safety score. This is a different factor. It is taking a look at a lot of what the road is like, considering traffic speed, number of cars per day, number of traffic lanes, and the number of pedestrian crashes. Asheville has more than its fair shares of crashes, and particularly pedestrian crashes in North Carolina. So these are 2 comparisons of what I'm talking about. This is Murdoch Road in North Asheville. It's a low traffic street with a lot of traffic calming. It has sidewalks. It's close to parks. It's got a lot of pedestrians and bikers, and it received the lowest score available of 1 point. And you can compare it to one of the worst streets in Asheville, which is Patton Avenue. It's got more than 4 lanes. It's got high speeds, high volumes, very difficult to walk parallel to, much less crossing it. So that would receive the maximum points of the safety score of 7. So then we have connectivity score. Where is everyone in Asheville going to? Some people are just walking around their neighborhoods. Some people are needing to get to work in the grocery store, and et cetera, et cetera. So similar to what we did with the greenways, we broke them down into basically 5 categories. The primary pedestrian spines being some of our biggest roads, but then moving on to the secondary roads, major collectors into neighborhoods and subdivisions in the suburbs, and then minor collectors, and then the more quieter neighborhood streets. And then finally, our public input from our surveys. And this was a lot of fun doing public input during a pandemic. We really had to pivot, and we did most of our input online with online surveys. And then staff at the city spent our time reaching out to the legacy neighborhoods and more marginalized neighborhoods of Asheville directly so that we could make sure that we could get input from them. We did receive a lot of input and it was all good. I would have to say our last meeting though, our last round of surveys was taking place during the Merriman Avenue public input. And also there was some heat in the Haw Creek neighborhood. So we got a lot of negative comments, more than I think were justified, because there were a lot of comments about Merriman Avenue and Haw Creek in the negative sections. So here we are. We were able to break all of the pedestrian plan into those 5 categories based on our scoring system. And then we broke it down into what the city is responsible for and what the DOT is responsible for. And and came up with this plan. And you will see it in the draft plan that if it is not up this evening, it will be up tomorrow. And it should be a very easy format to access on your phone or on your computer or tablet. Please share it with all your friends. It's for public review. So our Greenway master plan, we needed to take a look at the existing plan. There were a couple of Greenway corridors that were proposed in our current plan that we took out. And most of the reasons were because of constructability issues. And we had a tool developed for constructability as well. But another factor was that we looked at our destination and equity scoring from all of our roads, which gave us an indication in neighborhoods where we could use greenways to help with that pedestrian network. And then we started looking at, well, okay, so we can't have a Wilma Dykeman Greenway throughout all of Asheville. How do we get our greenways right-sized to make a network really happen? And we broke it down into 4 types, just like that slide I showed before. So our spine greenways, and these are all design guidelines that are going to be going into our city specs manual. For the first time, we'll have some design guidelines for our greenways. But our greenway spine will be our widest greenway with a suggested width of 14 feet and with lighting, just like the Rad Tip, the Wilma Dykeman down at the Rad Tip. This is a quick map. You can see more page. But this is a quick map of what the spine network looks like. It goes down into South Asheville on Sweden Creek, and it also heads west on east on Suananua. And we're going to have this section here built with the I-26 connector. So, oh, I'm sorry, this one here. And this is a railroad greenway, using a greenway in the West Asheville area that would go all the way to the Buncombe County Sports Park. And although it is an active railroad line, the right-of-way is very, very wide. And there are sections where the grade would be very appropriate to have a rail width trail. That, of course, has to go through a lot of discussions with the railroad that owns it. So these are the arterial greenways. This would be more like what you see on Reed Creek or Glen Creek. There are only existing arterial examples by UNCA, but we would suggest that these are 12 feet wide and that lighting should be considered. And then our neighborhood greenways. So really, how do you make this network happen? And this would be with a series of adaptations that we can make to our neighborhood streets to make them safer to walk and ride your bike and be in the street with your family. And that would look like some wayfinding, but also speed curb speed calming measures. There's a type of street in our NACTO guidelines, which are very bike and pedestrian friendly traffic and transportation guidelines, that call for shared streets, which is basically acknowledging that a street is quiet enough and traffic runs slow enough for people to be able to just share the road. But also with some relatively inexpensive measures, you can make a not so ideal street safe enough to be able to share the road as well. But these kind of things do deserve a study in each area that we're considering doing that before you just run out and do them. But tactical urbanism can be used to try things out. And we've been working pretty successfully with bike groups in the area on those kind of projects. So this is one of the things that we can work with in the future. I think I pretty much said all that from this, but another fancy slide of what a neighborhood greenway could look like. And so I'm elaborating a little bit more on greenways for your commission, but our top 10 priorities for greenways took in all of these considerations and came up with our top 10 priority list. And this is our top 10 priority list. Our number one greenway on our priority list is the Suananua Greenway. And the last time I was here, I gave you reasons why it's kind of urgent for us to spend some energy and brain power figuring out what to do in that area. These other two greenways, the Bowcatcher Greenway is on the priority list because it is designed and it also has some possibly some money in the budget to be able to work on that. The Reed Creek Greenway is also funded for a feasibility study right now. So a lot of these greenways are on the list because they already are partially designed, or there's some funding that would make them work easier, or partnerships such as the Hominy Creek Greenway East, which would line up with the greenway effort that the county is working on now. So these are our top 10 priorities. But another thing I would like to introduce with you tonight is a concept that we're about to roll out. We're going to be doing our public engagement later this spring, and it's Asheville Unpaved. The city is working with a number of nonprofits in the area to create a network of natural surface trails. And ultimately, it's because we've heard this from the public a lot, that greenways are really expensive and it takes forever to get them done. And how can we possibly fit asphalt trails everywhere? That these could be an supplemental network to the greenways and sidewalks. They're also much cheaper to build. But we do want to build them the right way. So trails, buildings built by sustainability guidelines are super important for us. Also, public engagement is going to be very important for us to move forward. But at this time, I think I've said all these things too. They're cheaper, they're more sustainable, and we find them to be appropriate as a supplemental network to the Greenway. Here's a picture of a lot of different ways a dirt trail can look. They can be wide, like state trails. These are more like what we have been thinking about right here, which are more multi-use paths. They're fairly wide. You can use two-directional traffic. You can have hikers and bikers there at the same time. This is very similar to a multi-use. And then there's single-use trails that would be for just biking or just hiking. Or it can be shared in various ways, like even naming the days of the week that hikers or bikers get to use them. But we've been seeing a lot of user conflicts up on Mountainside Park where the Bowcatcher Greenway is. And so this is an additional reason why this would be a great partnership for the city to work with. And we're looking at it in two different directions. One is trail hubs, which would be on large tracts of probably city-owned property, and creating a system of trails for fun. And then also neighborhood connectors that could possibly be used instead of sidewalks or as interim for sidewalks while we're waiting for them to come into our suburbs. So Asheville Unpaved, it's a group of nonprofits that we're working with. The primary organizations that are really throwing their backs into it are Asheville Unpaved, Connect Buncombe, and Pisgah Sorba, which is a regional mountain bike organization who has been working with the city on some bike trails in Richmond Hill. They are great at project management and can oversee these types of projects. The city's goal is to work with these groups who will create their own agreement, their own alliance that the city will enter an agreement, a contract with that alliance to do this work. The work will have an annual work plan, so all of the projects will be approved and agreed upon and probably well scoped before they're pushed out for public engagement and then hopefully construction after that. And they raised enough money to do a concept plan for what they would like to be the first round of projects. And these 4 are on large tracts of public land. The French Broad River West, where we're building the Greenway now, is on a big tract of land that Duke owns, but the city leases and has great potential for additional trails. But Cope Branch Greenway, which is behind the tennis courts and parallels Klingman Avenue, is possible even maybe as an interim as we're waiting for the funding for the design greenway to be built. But at this time, it's very hard to find the funding for Cope Branch. It's not, our typical grant sources aren't appropriate for it. So because this is right behind Asheville Junior High, or is it, I'm sorry, Asheville Middle School now. It was called Junior High when I went there. Asheville Middle School has an after-school program for bike riding and work with the NICA program, which is the National Children's Bike Association. This location would be an ideal location for some trails for those kids to be able to go and ride. Mountainside and is the Bowcatcher Greenway, but there's a lot of room up behind Memorial Stadium and behind McCormick Field that could add to trails, which will greatly reduce the wear and tear on the Greenway, which we might implement as a natural surface trail up there for now. And also hopefully reduce the user conflicts that we're seeing up there. And then Azalea Park has a lot of open space between the Nature Center and the Thomas Wolfe Cabin area and down by the soccer fields that could all be connected with a series of trails. And we have concept maps for all of them right now. We are preparing to do public engagement in the late spring. And right now we're meeting with neighborhoods that are very close to these areas here that we're looking at as pilot projects. And also coming to groups like you tell you what our concept is. Once public engagement is over and there is, we have some idea if this is a project that is popular with our community, then the city will hopefully, after council approves, engage with that into that partnership, and those partners begin fundraising for these pilot projects here. And the goal will be, like I said, for these groups to raise the money, hire the trail builder to construct these trails, and then they will maintain these trails. This is a kind of blurry example of just the Mountainside Park. You'll have to come to our public engagement meetings to see the clear shot. I guess this is just a sneak peek for you today. But the main greenway is this dotted line right here. And these side lines are different colors. So the green ones are the multi-use trails that would be open for biking and hiking. But these red trails up here and up here, this is more up the mountain towards the top of the mountain. And near Helen's Bridge, we could create a series of bike-only trails up here. And these pink lines are neighborhood connectors that can get you from the Hunt Hill Apartments, for example, or Memorial Stadium in McCormick Field, up to the main greenway and also to the trail system. And this map shows you an idea of the connectivity of these trail systems. So the Asheville unpaved are these squiggly light green lines. And these green lines, the yellow lines, the blue lines, and the red lines are the GAPS Greenway network. So when you piece all of this together, I hope you can see that we're really starting to make a network here where people can start maybe thinking about not having to use their car to get around, and teenagers and families can get around a lot more easily and have fun doing it. And that's the end of my presentation. If anyone would like to ask me a question.
Lucy, thank you. I mean, this is wonderful. It makes me feel better after being in a funk. And for the commission, is any way that I can support you, if the commission could support you, I think this is great. My one question, of course, is the ADA stuff. I'm sure you've checked all those boxes. I'm glad that that's something that this can happen. As somebody used to be young enough to ride single track all the time, it's a great thing. I mean, people have been making them forever, you know, sort of on their own, but it's great because it's.
Yeah, doing it this way will ensure that they're built sustainably to prevent erosion. And the plus side of that is also they are usually more accessible to a lot more people. Right. And our plan for ADA accessibility is to categorize them much like ski slopes, so people will know how challenging they are going into them. There'll be a web page that will give you the information beforehand and trailheads that have it there. So people can make up their own minds, because I know a number of people with disabilities that are way more athletic than I am and can do way harder things than me. So no need to limit them if they don't want to be limited.
Right. Thank you.
To follow up on Tim's comment about ways in which the commission and the commissioners can support these initiatives, Lucy, if you want to and you're able to send me some ways in which we can do that, I will get that out to the rest of the commissioners. Okay, great. Well, we plan to take the GAP plans to council for their adoption on May 24th. Fingers crossed. I'll let you know if that changes, but if you would like to come and support in public comment or
if you can think of any other ways with Stephanie, I would love any support you can give us.
Well, thanks again.
Thanks.
If there's no other questions, we can move on. I apologize, we are behind schedule. It looks like Will Palmquist from the city of Asheville will be presenting the Artful Way as well as the Redwood Commons. And then commissioners can ask questions.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Will Palmquist with Planning and Urban Design. As Darren said, I'll be presenting 2 new building projects in the Riverfront area. They both went to informal design review committee review last month, and they're coming for formal review by the DRC this coming Thursday. I guess I'll start with the Artful Way, and I think Jeremy will be an interested listener for this. He is one of the applicants. We also have, I think, the architect for the project here as well. So when I'm done giving a brief overview, she can correct whatever I got wrong and also hear the input that you all have to give. I present this screen while looking at other screens. Hopefully, get this all. Full screen. Full hours, but all right. So this is the Artful Way. It is a mixed-use building proposed at the top of a street called Artful Way. You can see it here, and also has vehicular access from Clingman Avenue Extension. So this is kind of at the top of that little hill. Haywood Road is right over here to the north of the site, and the Radview project that was recently completed by, I think, the same development team is just to the south along Artful Way. Let's see here. And it's just up the hill from the Gray Eagle on Clingman Ave Extension, which you can kind of see in this, rendering here. Just some details about the project itself. It's 6 stories total, 2 levels of parking with 4 stories above. You can kind of see how the parking is more exposed on the Clingman Avenue side, and then 4 stories on the Artful Way side, the way it works into the slope. They're proposed to be 34 residential units and 27 lodging units, as well as about 1,500 square feet of retail office space. So here are some of the elevations. You can see kind of the parking facing Clingman Avenue Extension, and then the pedestrian access on Artful Way on the west elevation. So the address is on Artful Way, but the vehicular access is off Clingman Avenue Extension. There's also pedestrian access to both from both streets as well. Materials vary. You can see it's a metal wall, kind of corrugated metal, where these different bands of the gray are. And then the different panels of the gray, like on these stair tower portions of the facade, are a cement, fiber cement type material. Concrete on the parking garage elevation, which is also screened with these metal mesh screen elements. And then the pink kind of highlight color worked in different elements of the project, like these fixed windows and signage and planters to give it some accent coloring. And then here are some perspective views of the project. You can kind of get a sense of how it's laid out into the site, how the access works from Clingman Ave Extension. I'll note that all these plans are on the DRC website under the April 21 meeting folder. So feel free to take a look at that folder to look at these more at your leisure. Here's just some examples of different projects. A better view of the site. There used to be a house on the site that burned down. This is the Rad View project on the right side here that is kind of before or on Artful Way before you get to this project site. Here's some sites of the current conditions, more or less. This bridge on Artful Way that's kind of under capacity as far as weight, and therefore like fire access wouldn't be feasible. Then the landscape plan. So I'll just hit some highlights of how this project conforms with the development impact areas. As far as water quality and stormwater goes, there's definitely an increase in landscaping overall for this property, and silvacells are proposed in the tree wells along Artful Way. There's also a green roof proposed for the parking garage ramp element that you can see here. There's also, as far as parking, multimodal transportation, new sidewalks are going to be built on Artful Way and Klingman Ave extension. And there is, discussion about the potential for this rendering makes it look closer than it really is, but where Artful Way ends, there's still quite a distance before you get to Haywood Street. But the project, I think, team and owner is in the future kind of been encouraged to think about maybe pedestrian connections to Haywood Road, so it wouldn't be as isolated because currently the road just ends at the top of this hill. There is a mix of commercial and retail space proposed that will kind of enliven the economic and business climate of the area. There will be new residential, market rate, no affordable housing as part of this project. The urban design is kind of fits within the industrial framework of the overall area in which it resides. Has signing and some interesting elements to it as well. There's no specific certification for sustainability that this project is seeking, nor is it a technically brownfield site. There is the green roof that will help to eliminate runoff, reduce runoff and surface temperatures around the building and help cool a little bit of that area. Nope, there's no explicit equity or racial justice component identified in this project. As far as public safety goes, no explicit discussion of that, but the area you can kind of see in the photos is a little bit of a no man's land currently. So obviously, adding life back to this area was already kind of begun to redevelop going up the Artful Way road will definitely increase public safety overall. It's kind of off the beaten path of the Wilma Dykeman Greenway. It complies with a few goals of Living Asheville comprehensive plan, such as encouraging responsible growth, increasing the diversity, increase and diversify the housing supply, and also increase mixed-use development. There has been some public comment received on this, perhaps more at the next DRC formal review of it, and no significant noise, odor, or negative impacts identified with the project. Here's some more details on landscape species. It's I think the landscaping got definitely good reviews of the informal DRC review. It's meets code and then goes a little bit beyond it as well. Some of the design elements of the project, like planters and benches, some ideas of how they're going to screen their dumpster enclosures, that sort of thing. So that's kind of it as far as what I have to say. I guess open it up to comments and questions. can let the project team chime in as needed. I think, Ben has his hand raised.
Yeah, thanks, Will, for that. I want to make sure I heard you correctly that there are 0 affordable housing units projected with the project. And my limited understanding of this process is if these developments don't offer affordable housing, that they contribute to the community and other, or contribute to there's other ways that they can sort of work around that, for lack of a better term. And so help me fill in that blank if that's even accurate. And then secondly, I thought I heard you say this diversifies the housing in our area or in the River Arts. And I'm curious if it doesn't offer any affordable housing units, how that would diversify. Help me understand what you meant by that statement. Thank you.
Sure. So to your first question, this is not a conditional zoning project. I should mention that. It's small enough to be a level 2 review. And, typically if a project is going for a commercial zone, conditional zoning to city council, they'll probably include some affordable housing. This project is not going to city council for review as currently proposed. There will be some public benefits required due to the hotel use of the project. So any hotel that is not going to city council review needs to get a favorable approval by the design review committee. And it also has to have a certain number of public benefits, whether that's the nature of the project itself or payment into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund or Reparations Fund. And those are required as well. So there will be that. You are correct, though, that if a project does not typically have affordable housing, there's usually other benefits of the project. But that's typically more in a conditional zoning case. And this project is not that. And then as far as like the diversify housing stock, that's more or less just the name of the goal in the Living Asheville plan. So that the goal is called increase and diversified housing supply. I can't speak to how this project necessarily diversifies the housing supply, but it certainly increases it. So that's just kind of the name of that goal in the Living Asheville plan.
Great, thank you.
Tim? Tim?
Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, this did go before RABA, before the Business Owners Association and the community, and there was no negative comment. I think for the neighborhood, we need people to be living in the neighborhood. The crime aspect that was mentioned is real, and actually, Jeremy is facing it even in the place that he has already developed. So I think this is being greeted pretty well, or very well, by the neighborhood. I mean, it's interesting because we're going to have a lot of housing fairly soon, but to get people there overnight is really important for the neighborhood.
Jeremy or Laura, can you confirm the number of hotel suites or units versus the apartment units?
Sure. We're showing 27 apartment units on levels 3 and 4, and then we have 34 long-term rental. 27 hotel units, levels 3 and 4, and then 34 long-term apartment rentals on levels 5 and 6. And I will note, though, that the hotel units are being designed exactly like the apartment units so that they can be converted to long-term units in the future. They will have full kitchens.
Thank you. And then maybe Jeremy, do you have a timeline of when it might, 1, break ground and 2 might open? And maybe this may be the first hotel, depending on the progress of the Kent building, opened in the district.
Yeah, I don't know what the Radicals timeframe is, but this summer breaking ground, early 24 completion.
Thank you. Were there any other questions from the commissioners for Jeremy or Laura or Will? Comments? I can't see everybody, so I apologize. All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Looks like a really well designed and well thought out project, and I think I can speak for myself, and I'm really excited to see this type of development happening in the district. So thank you for the courage it takes to do something like this. So I guess we'll move on then, Will, to Redwood Commons.
Yes, sir. So now I will give some background about another development project in the area called Redwood Commons. We also have folks from the development and design team here with us this evening as well. So this project is located in the Suananua East design area. It's at 21 Governor's View Road, situated between Suananua River Road and Governor's View Road. As you can see in this aerial here, this is essentially all these that is across Suananua River on Blue Tree Boulevard. You can just see the Blue Tree Boulevard Bridge here. Here's a view of the site plan. So this project is 70 residential apartment units. They're all proposed to be affordable for senior living. So the project team is working on securing all the affordable housing tax credits and things currently. So they have been to the informal DRC last month. They're coming for a formal review this month. And then if that goes well, they will then go to planning and zoning in May, because this is a large enough project to require a conditional zoning from the current zoning district to the residential expansion district, and then eventually city council approval. So you can see, the project is kind of situated, the building itself is situated more towards the south of the site, with the parking in the north between it and Governor's View Road. A lot of that is just due to the kind of the terrain of the project, some of the challenges with the site, including this FEMA floodway located in the southeast of the site here. As far as some details about the building itself, here are just some floor plans. So it's kind of L-shaped, double loaded corridor, has some functions like a community room and that sort of thing. Well, let's see. Okay, here are some of the building renderings and elevations. So it's proposed to be 4 stories in height. The materials are a little more economical, given that it's a affordable housing project that's going to require tax credits and other funding mechanisms. A lot of the material is they're proposing currently as vinyl vertical siding in this darker color, with vinyl horizontal siding in the lighter color. They will be seeking bids to use potentially cement board siding instead, and to compare the costs on that. And if it's able to be done, they will be kind of upgrading the materials, but at the baseline is the vinyl exterior. There's also a thin stone veneer proposed in the center portion of the building, as well as on some of the side elevations, and that also continues through the base of the building all the way around. So this is the north elevation at the bottom that faces the parking lot. It's kind of has the main entrance feature with the canopy and the the sign with the project name and the street number on it. This is the east elevation. So I guess as you're coming down Governor's View Road to the west, this is what you see. This is kind of the end of the L shape on the right. And then so here's the south elevation. So what you would see from Suananua River Road, and this is the other end of that end of that L on the right, and the west elevation here. Some renderings of the project. Leave it up for a second. So as far as project impact development review goes, it's definitely constrained as far as the stormwater goes with the FEMA floodway. No innovative stormwater approaches, but it will, I think, improve the quality of the overall plantings. There are some large trees on the site, but it's kind of overgrown with a lot of vines, and so the overall planting of the slope will be higher quality. There will be new sidewalks constructed along Suananua River Road and Governor View Road. Go back to the site plan. So then the sidewalk network is improved along both frontages, but then there's also kind of these paths that are going to be paved that connect around the site. They also connect down to Suananua River Road on this sidewalk that's on a ramp that's at an ADA accessible grade. So that will connect you down to Suananua River Road. And then currently, where the bus shelter is literally just a sign on the grass on the side of the road, there will be an improved bus shelter as part of this project. And then the sidewalk will continue to the edge of the property here. And those are, I believe, 5 feet wide sidewalks. It's all residential, so except for adding more patrons to the area, doesn't affect the specific economic or business climate there. The residential climate definitely adds more folks living there, and they're all going to be at an affordable rate. The urban design, it's definitely a more economic style building, just the overall direction of it. But I think the architect has worked well to kind of incorporate different elements to it that blend well with this district of the riverfront, which is a little more commercial and somewhat suburban as compared to like the core district. So I think in that regard, it fits in with the surroundings. As far as the sustainability and the environment, there are some interesting features proposed, like this covered picnic area for folks, and also these raised garden beds that could act as a community garden. Let's see, no specific equity or racial justice component of the project. Public safety, nothing specific, but definitely adds more folks to the area, which increases the public safety just inherently. It will help connect to the new Suananua Greenway by providing the connection through the site down to Suananua River Road, where it will connect to that new proposed greenway. It also addresses a few goals in the Living Asheville Comprehensive Plan, such as encouraging responsible growth, increasing and diversifying the housing supply, and promoting the development and availability of affordable and workforce housing. A little bit of public comment received, and they've definitely had their required community neighborhood meeting as part of this process, and there will be a few additional public hearings between the DRC, Planning and Zoning, and City Council. And there are no identified noise, odor, or negative impacts associated with the project. And that is it for me. There's also site plans, the landscape plans included as well. It's a plan that meets the code requirements, and that were some suggestions at the last DRC review of ways to improve the landscaping, but it is in compliance with the UDO's landscape requirements. And I'd be happy to answer questions, and also folks from the project team are here as well if needed. Or to take comments, and those will be recorded and put into the staff report that the DRC reviews before next week's meeting.
Is the developer in this meeting?
Yeah.
Yes, we're here.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Was there a specific reason you chose this parcel of land?
That's a good question. So as Will mentioned, this project is pursuing funding through the Low Income Housing Tax Credit Program through North Carolina's Housing Finance Authority. So that's a competitive process by which sites are evaluated. And so there are a number of criteria that factor into it. Proximity to a number of basic services, a pharmacy, a grocery store, that sort of thing, public transportation, as well as jobs in the area. That there's kind of a whole list of things that sort of get into a matrix that sort of help it score. So that's kind of the first, blush, I guess you would say, that we would go through to try to identify sites within the community. So that was sort of initially how we landed here. And, we've done, at this point, we're sort of approaching our second submittal for funding that Will mentioned. So, part of that is getting our zoning in place. So, in a lot of ways, the design is still very early, but we, have done we did a sort of initial market study to determine what the need was in the area. At our, initial sort of preliminary TRC meeting, we talked with city staff and got some great feedback on, their knowledge of the need for affordable housing, not only in the city, but in this area. And so at this point, the State Housing Authority has actually committed a market study that is really what has, influenced our unit counts to 70, and the, because there's a very high demand in Asheville. So we've got some sort of verification of the need as well, and the proximity to all the services we think makes it a really good opportunity. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. And my follow-up is: do you expect the tenants to be those who already live in Asheville, or from out of town moving to retire here?
I mean, we would, probably possibly a combination of both, but, the expectation, the market study, it's not that there's an anticipation that people might be there and a demand might be there. The market study, tells us and guides us to know where there is an existing demand, that within the community, and specifically where we're looking, there is a demand for the housing. So, down to the number of units, and it also sort of helps us sort of structure the project. So as Will mentioned, this will be 100% affordable. I think Brennan Mahoney might still be on the line here, who works with me as well. Yeah, he's more directly involved on the financing side, but I believe we're targeting 20 to 60% of area media income here.
Yeah, I can touch on that a little bit. We'll be targeting at the actually the 30% level, the 50% level, and the 60% level. And the market study pretty much showed us that in the immediate area of this site, that there is a need where the capture rate's not going to exceed, I think, 8%. So we're not even hitting 8% of the need that currently exists. We wouldn't need to be bringing anybody in to the area of Asheville to fill this, and it would expect to be rented up in about 6 to 8 months based on the market study we received from the state. And everything Aaron said about the location is we have to hit a perfect site score to even be competitive to receive award. And, those kind of create little pockets of places within Asheville and around the state that we can do that. And this is one of those sites that meets all the requirements for a perfect site score that the state has laid out.
Do you prioritize diversity?
There's an entire tenant selection process. I'm not exactly 100% sure on that management side of what the tenant, that we have a different section that runs the whole tenant basically renting out the apartments. And I can't exactly answer that at the moment.
Okay, thank you. I've kind of taken up a lot of these questions. Are there any other commissioners that have questions or comments?
I feel like I want to channel Jane on this one. I like the idea of changing the siding. I get it that this is affordable and, you got to squeeze it in, and I'm glad that the affordability for seniors is available. Aesthetically, it's, I understand it. It's not exciting. It's not exciting like Jeremy's is. But if we go to that cement siding, it just seems like it'll be prettier for longer. But that's a layman's description.
We appreciate the comment and we agree. Some of this is just driven that right now, as we all know, the market's a little bit crazy. So all material pricing has gotten pretty extreme. And as we've talked with the design review committee and TRC, we have another project right now in Kernersville, North Carolina, that is really experiencing those cost escalations, and we're in a position where we're trying to sort of scale back from cement board and some other items. So we're trying to sort of proactively plan for that, I guess you could say, in this scenario. But we also understand the need for quality materials. We're here today as the developers, but we also have a management arm. So this is not simply a building that we're going to flip and walk away from. We will be managing it. So we have an active interest in having quality materials and having a building that will be an asset in the community, will be a value to the site, that will be there and look good for a number of years. That's certainly a goal that we share, and we certainly think there are ways to do that economically. But we're also here to listen and understand, and if there's a strong desire in the community for some upgrades in materials. Like I said, we're early enough in the process that we can start to try to budget for those things. So we're trying to, we're here to listen and hear those concerns. So thank you.
Yeah, and I would just also touch on that. Kind of like Aaron said, we have an interest in having the best product out available, as we have a management arm, and we have to manage it for the 15 to 20 year period. So we would like to use those materials as well, but just not knowing what the cost could end up being in a year, 2 years when we start construction. We just don't know if we want to be locked in having to use those materials. If they experience a sudden price increase or something that we weren't expecting that they're currently at now, or things like that. We just kind of want to leave it open, but we would like to put out the best product we can.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments before we move on? Well, thank you all for the presentation.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
All right, we're going to move on now to the subcommittee update. Tim, do you have a parking and mobility update?
Well, the one thing we were working on was trying to get the grant money for the trolley that will someday go from the museum to 8 River Arts Place. And my understanding is that, seeing the scoring, that the funding, we probably won't get the funding. I mean, I do know there's still a council person on this meeting. If we could get 1 year of funding, we could get it started. So I'll still hold out hope. But I think it was good for the process. It's been a long process, but we've been working on this for a while. We have more people involved. Having Jay Black Wall Street AVL in and Radba in, we're going to search for other funding while we hold out hope for a few pennies from the grant. No, but I listened to the grant presentations, and there's a lot of really great needs, so I understand where we stand in the status. That's where I am, other than being frustrated with transportation in the city right now, but I think I voiced that enough. And time to go to dinner.
Well, thank you. We're down to our last few commissioners. Let's see here. So the next point is our next month's meeting is planned to be an in-person meeting at City Hall, and it will consist mostly of a summit. And I'll let Ann give you an update to what that agenda will likely look like.
Yes, we have 4 speakers, and we're focusing on river health and economic value. The first speaker will be Landon Davidson from DEQ. He's going to talk about the water quality status of a major part of the river flowing through the city. And then we'll have Jay Hawthorne, who's on the French Broad River Partnership Steering Committee and Business and Recreation Subcommittee. He's going to present the economic impact study results. Marshall Taylor from the Stormwater Task Force is going to talk about some proposals from the task force that could improve stormwater and stormwater management in the city. And then Renee Fortner is going to talk about the Central Asheville watershed and the Southside project there at Livingston in the public housing area. She's been making great progress on getting funding and starting to work on it. But of course, there's more that's needed. So we thought that would be a really good way to start the education exchange or information exchange. And then perhaps in the fall, we could have a meeting that would focus on getting people's, like, what can we do about it sort of deal. We know the causes, we know the issue, we know the causes. At this meeting, we talk about those, and then maybe down the road, we look at how can we build some community support and input to help motivate us all as a city to address the issues. So I think that's kind of the approach we were looking at.
Thank you. Steph, was there anything you wanted to add? You've been privy to all these conversations in our committee meetings.
No, you guys got it.
Thank you. And thank you for all your hard work. It's so appreciated. And I'm very hopeful and confident that this live in-person meeting will be an eye-opener for the commissioners and hopefully some on city council and the Buncombe County Commission to take a look at this and find ways to make a positive impact. So
yeah,
we will share more information as we put it together to the commissioners through email. It looks like we lost our city council member. But I will just add that.
Like to make a motion?
No, not yet. The ARPA work session is Monday, April 25th.
Him stating he looks very hungry.
You didn't know this, but I took my kids' hot dogs out of the oven. Well, anyway. So ARPA, so we'll know definitively on April 25th which ARPA grants will be funded, it appears. Commissioner Sloan is not here. Was there any live public comment or any callers on the phone?
There are no callers in the queue.
What? We're batting 0 for about 12. All right.
I make a motion to.
I beat you. He beat you too, Goldstein.
Make a motion. Make a motion to walk over to the jail and have a sandwich. Yep.
Well, thank you all for sticking through the whole meeting. I thought it was a good meeting, and I appreciate everybody's.
Yeah. And thank you, Ann. Thank you, Ann, for that. I'm looking forward to the next meeting.
Yeah, thank you all.
Yep.
Bye.
Take
Yeah.
care.
Good night.
Good night.